Hi everyone, my name's Loughlin and today we will be cooking a cherry galette. Now a cherry galette is basically a free-formed tart. So it's a tart without using a tart ring. And the great thing about this is you can really make this whatever shape you want. I am using today a round baking tray. So something like this, which just helps me make sure that the tart at least stays round. But then I can basically pop in the filling, fold up all the edges, and it can be nice and rustic looking, and it's very easy, and using some beautiful cherries, which has to be one of the highlights of summer for me. I love all the stone fruit. So to start off, we need to make our pastry, and in front of me here I have all of the pastry ingredients. So I have some flour, some pecans, some salt, some sugar, some cinnamon, and some butter. I also have a little bit of iced water, which we might need just to bring this all together to form that nice smooth dough. Now the pecans, they start off as a whole nut, obviously, and we pop them into a food processor to blitz them until they turn into like almond meal, basically, or any other ground nut. So you want them a little bit coarse, but also nice and fine, so it distributes through the mix perfectly well. Now what you can do if you wish, you can pop all of these dry ingredients into a food processor along with the butter and blitz that until it resembles breadcrumbs, and then add the water in. It's pretty much done. Or you can do it by hand, which is my preference. You'll get a better result, I think. You'll have more control, and I just think it's a better way to do it. Now when we do this, I'll show you obviously, but you need to make sure that you rub in the flour with your fingertips and not the palm of your hands. What we don't want to do is for this butter to melt. So I'll pop everything in: flour, our ground nuts, cinnamon, sugar, and salt. Now before I sort of progress, I just like to get these mixed around so we have one even mix of all the dry ingredients. That'll just make everything taste as it should, so that's like so. I have 125 grams of butter. It's nice and cold, and it's also diced. They are two very important things. Now using your fingertips only, just basically pinch this, this flour and the butter, and it will slowly break up. This will probably take 5 minutes or so, maybe less, depending on how strong your hands are, but work away, and we'll get this to a nice fine breadcrumb. So this is about 30 seconds in, and you can see it's quite thick still, but as we just use the fingertips like I am here, just continuously work at it. And the more we do this, it breaks up the butter, it becomes, you know, a better texture, and your butter shouldn't be melting. So work away at this. And yeah, a few minutes later, we'll have a really nice fine texture. Okay, so it's been a few minutes now, and this pastry is now looking really good. Now, compared to other pastries, this will clump up slightly thicker. Because we add the nut, there's lots of oils, and you know, they break down and you get a slightly wetter result. So this is looking great. Basically now what we can do is add some water, form this into a dough, and then we can let that rest. So here I've got about 80 ml of cold water. Now how much water you need is going to be different every single time. Today the nuts I'm using are quite oily, and I reckon I only need 20 ml or so. And it's just really important that you add enough water to bind this. You don't want a wet dough because that's going to make it difficult to roll. So add a few drops and then just bring this together. And it is really important that you use ice cold water, as if it's warm or, you know, even room temp, that can potentially melt the butter. So that, what I added then, is pretty much perfect. So you can see here I've got a nice clump of pastry. Don't work this too much because you don't want it to be tough or anything. So simply in your hands, just form it into a disc. And now all we need to do is wrap this in cling film, rest it in the fridge for 20 to 30 minutes ideally. The longer the better. But in 20 minutes this will still be easy to work. If you do this for an hour, for example, the butter will set too hard and it will actually be really difficult to roll out. So we'll let this rest a little bit. In the meantime, we can get all the filling stuff ready to go. So we can pit the cherries, mix all those together, and then we can finish off the tart. So whilst our pastry is resting away in the fridge, let's get on to our filling. And in front of me here, I have all of the ingredients that we need. I have a huge bowl of cherries. Now we don't need all of these cherries. We only need about 600 grams of the pitted weight. So that's probably 650 to 700, depending on the size of the cherries in total. I've got some oranges, which we'll use for the zest, some caster sugar, some lemon juice, and some corn flour. The corn flour will help with all those leaking juices to thicken them nicely, and we'll have a nice thick filling in our tart. So you need a cherry pipper. Your life will be so much easier if you have one of these. So take some time, pip these cherries, and once you've got, half a bowl or so worth, go over to the scales, weigh that and see where you're at. And yeah, around 600 grams of pitted cherries is what we need. Okay, excellent. So here we have 600 grams of our cherries. All my pips are there, which I can put to the side. And as an added bonus, we have a heap of cherries that we can just eat. So back into the fridge. There you go. And now it's really simple. I like to just sprinkle over the ingredients sort of one by one. So sugar goes in. I'll then do the lemon juice. I've got a tablespoon of corn flour, so that goes over the top. And I will also add the zest of 2 oranges. So just use a zester of any sort and get as much zest as you can into these. Take your time so you're not wasting any on the oranges, and then we'll get a spoon and we'll give this a really good mix. Okay, so the last of the zest has gone in now. All the ingredients are there. Just grab a rubber spatula or something, or a spoon, and give this a really good mix. Make sure all of those dry ingredients, in particular corn flour, has got a really nice coat on all of these cherries and everything like that, as this will give you a really nice thick filling on this galette. So this is looking beautiful now. You can see we've got nice even coverage. The juices are starting to leak out of the cherries, so that is excellent. I can now clear my bench down. I'll get the pastry out of the fridge because that's nicely rested. We can roll that out and start to build this galette. So I have everything here in front of me ready to go. I have my rested pastry, my cherries all mixed together, a rolling pin, which is important. The oven behind me is preheated to intensive bake at 170 degrees. I also have my baking tray ready to go. And to assist me with rolling this out, you can either use a floured bench, but I am a fan of using, for such a soft pastry like today, some baking paper. So I've got 2 sheets of paper here, and all I'll do is I'll pop this in the middle. Now I've started with a round piece of pastry. And typically when you start with a round piece, you'll finish with a round piece. It's easier to roll the shape that you start off with. If you start with a square shape, more often than not, the end result becomes square. In saying that, this is a galette, it's a free-formed tart. Don't really worry about the shape that this becomes. It's going to be delicious, it's a rustic tart, so you do want that rustic look. So, I just like to press that in with my hands first. Get your rolling pin, sliding away from me. I always try and roll, always in one way from where you're standing, and always turn the product. And try and get this as round as possible. You probably want this about 30 centimeters in diameter, thereabouts. But you don't need to get a ruler out or anything. Quite often what I do is pick up your tray, sit it on top, and I like this to be slightly bigger than the tray. So we've still got a little bit to go. So we've got our pastry all rolled out, and if I sit this on top, the pastry is slightly wider than this tin, which is excellent. So now I can literally peel that off. What I like to do now is grab this, pop it upside down, grab the paper and just flip it over the top. This will land however it lands. Don't worry too much about that. Just be careful when you rip this paper off. You don't want any holes. If we do have holes, that is exactly where your juices from your cherries will leak. So be a little bit cautious. Beautiful. That is exactly what we want. So if we've got our pastry lined in, we'll fill it, so we've got about a 5 centimeter border or so, then we can fold those edges over the top. Okay, so now all we have to do is grab our cherries and literally just pile them up in the middle. They do want to roll everywhere, so just be careful. Make sure you get all of that mixture over the top. And now as you can see, it's chaos, you know, they've gone everywhere. So just using your hands, you know, you're the boss, put them where you want them, pile them up so you've got that nice border around the edge. So you can see we've got this perimeter here, and now just carefully, it is, you know, it is a rustic tart, just fold over these edges and make sure that you're keeping in all that juice. I've got a stuck bit there, but that's okay. Tuck that in. Any bits you think might be leaking, just patch them up like so. Get around, it can be a little bit tricky, but that's the great thing about this tart is no two galettes look the same. And just to finish off, in case these, and there we go, that looks pretty good to me. So just make sure it's all tight around the edges. And the final thing which we would do is just get a pastry brush and apply some milk to the crust, and then some Demerara sugar or something to get that nice crispiness. But that is almost good to go. Okay, so we're just going to apply the milk to here. Don't be worried about too much about how it sits on, if it does or if it doesn't. You know, we just need something for the sugar to sit onto. So it's just a few dabs here and there. Grab your Demerara sugar, sprinkle this on top, however it falls is perfectly fine. And now that's good to go. So the oven behind me is ready to go. This is going in on intensive bake at 170 degrees on shelf level 1, and we'll cook this for about 40 minutes or until the filling starts to bubble and the pastry is nice and crisp. Okay, so it's been 40 minutes. The smell is amazing. The galette is ready to go. So here we go, we've got some beautiful colour. The cherries are blistered a little bit on top. I've had a little bit of leakage, but nothing too serious. And now the most important thing that we have to do is, it's just like a biscuit. If we try and lift this off the tray straight away, it'll probably break up. So we need to pop this just on the bench for at least 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, until it cools down. That will help it set into shape, and then we can transfer this to a plate and we can serve it. But this is delicious, slightly warm, even just at room temp, so it's good to go. So now let's just be patient, wait 10 minutes and we're good to go. So here it is, beautiful cherry galette, nice and rustic looking tart, fits into the plate nice, which is good, and it's relatively round, so that's an added bonus. Now, all we have to do is serve it up. So I like to get some creme fraiche. You can just use some cream or some yogurt or really anything like that. Cut yourself a slice and you're good to go. So this does tend to fall apart a little bit with all those cherries. They're quite a large piece of fruit, but get a nice slice onto a plate like so. Good dollop of creme fraiche. Beautiful, good enough to eat, I think. So there we have it. Super, super tasty, using some amazing fruit at this time of year. So thank you so much for watching. We would really love it if you give this recipe a go. If you do, please take a photo, post it on Facebook or Instagram, and make sure you tag me along, as we would love to follow you in all of your cooking.